My name is Haley Morgan. I'm 36, and last night at my sister's anniversary party, I watched her slip something into my glass. Not accidentally. Not absent-mindedly. She looked me in the eye as I reached for it and smiled. The ballroom lights shimmered across cut crystal and fake laughter, but I couldn't hear any of it. I just stood there, holding that glass, wondering how many years it had been building to this. Have you ever caught someone in the act, someone who swore they loved you and pretended you didn't see it, just to find out what they'd do next? Go ahead and hit that like button if you've ever had to smile through betrayal. Because the moment her husband raised my glass to his lips, her face turned pale. Let me take you back. The lodge smelled like vanilla candles and old pine wood, the kind of place that tries to be fancy but still feels like a church basement with better lighting. There were gold balloons strung above the buffet, a live trio playing jazz covers no one asked for, and enough custom napkins to wallpaper the county. Brooke had gone all out, of course. It was her 10-year anniversary, and the entire town was supposed to believe she and Mark were still in love. Still perfect. Still broke. I arrived 20 minutes late on purpose, but that didn't stop her from greeting me like I'd just wandered in off the street. "Haley, you look so sweet," she said, her smile a little too stretched. "That's the dress from Mom's birthday, right? Still holding up?" I nodded, brushing past the comment. "Happy anniversary." Her eyes flicked to the champagne flute I'd just picked up from the cocktail table. "You're drinking?" "Why not?" She laughed sharp, light, and disappeared into a circle of her influencer friends, all tan and glossy and wearing shoes that had clearly never touched a gravel driveway. I took a sip, or at least pretended to. The flute felt cold and fragile in my hand, and I was already counting the minutes until I could leave. Then I saw Mark. He stood near the edge of the crowd, tugging at his collar like it was trying to strangle him. Our eyes met, and he raised his glass in a small, almost sad toast. It was that gesture so human, so quiet that made me turn back toward the drink table for a refill. And that's when it happened. In the reflection of the lodge's oversized window, I saw Brooke behind me. Not facing me, not speaking, just leaning ever so slightly over the row of untouched glasses. Her clutch was open. Her hand moved quickly. Then she straightened, smoothing her dress, and walked away with a smile like she'd just won a prize. I turned around slowly, heart thudding in my ears. There were half a dozen flutes arranged neatly on the white draped table, but one stood just a little out of line. The one she'd tampered with. My hands didn't shake, not yet. Instead, I picked it up. Studied the liquid inside. There was nothing obvious. No color, no fizz. But there was something wrong. Something I could feel. I didn't look for her again. I didn't ask why. I just scanned the room for Mark. He was by the gift table, standing alone, rubbing the back of his neck the way he always did when Brooke made a scene in public. I walked over slowly, holding the glass like it was any other toast on any other night. "Care for a switch?" I asked lightly, lifting the flute. "Champagne's better than whatever that is." He gave a half smile. "Is it?" I nodded. "Let's make it official. A toast to your next 10 years. Mark shrugged and handed me his drink, some kind of brown liquor, nearly empty, and took the champagne without a second thought. We clinked glasses. "To peace," I said quietly. "To peace," he repeated, and drank. I barely wet my lips with his leftover bourbon. The taste was harsh, sharp, nothing like what I imagined she'd planned for me. As I turned, I saw her across the room. Brooke. Watching me. Her eyes darted to the glass in my hand, then to the one now in Mark's. And for the first time in my life, she looked afraid. It was subtle. Just a flicker of confusion. A crack in the performance. But I saw it. I gave her a little wave. The kind people give across crowded parties, polite, harmless, forgettable. Then I walked away, set Mark's glass down on a passing tray, and headed to the dessert table as if nothing had happened. Because nothing had. Not yet. But the tremble in her smile told me something she didn't mean to reveal. She hadn't expected me to notice. She hadn't expected me to act. And she definitely hadn't expected me to win. The worst part was how normal everything still looked. Mark didn't stumble. He didn't cough or wince or drop the glass. He just took a sip, smiled at nothing in particular, and kept standing there like nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it in my spine, that quiet sense when the energy in a room shifts and only you can tell. It was the same feeling I used to get before Brooke would accidentally lock me out of the house or delete my homework from the family computer and blame the virus. There was never a big scene with her. Just little slashes behind the curtain. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I ignored it. I needed to stay in the moment. To watch. To wait. Because I didn't switch those glasses for revenge. I did it to know what she was capable of. And something in me already knew. When people hear sister, they think sleepovers and matching dresses, braiding each other's hair before school. That's not how we grew up. Brooke was 3 years older, and from the day I was born, she seemed to think I'd been placed here to steal something from her. Attention. Space. Air. Our mom used to say, "That's just how girls are, you'll grow out of it." But we never did. Or at least, Brooke didn't. There were little things. Always little. When I made honor roll, she told people I cheated. When I got my first boyfriend, she started driving him home from school just being nice. 2 weeks later, he dumped me in the cafeteria and started dating her. She told me it wasn't her fault if people preferred confidence. I told myself she didn't mean it. That it was just hormones and sibling rivalry and bad luck. I told myself that for years. Even when I got accepted to the community college and she said, "Well, at least you'll have backup skills if nothing real works out." Even when I bought her that mug that said, "Best sister ever," and found it shoved under the bathroom sink 6 months later, chipped and stained with hair dye. I kept that mug. Didn't throw it out. It sits in the back of my cabinet, behind the travel mugs and mismatched glassware. Every now and then I see it and wonder who I thought I was trying to convince her, or me. Mark had been the only person in our world who ever seemed unaffected by Brooke's performance. When she introduced him to us, he was fresh out of the army, still stiff in posture, yes, ma'am polite. But something about him felt quiet in a way Brooke never tolerated. She tried to dazzle him. He watched her talk like he was trying to read the subtitles of a foreign film. And when they got married in that sweltering outdoor ceremony with the wine barrel centerpieces and Brooke's monogram stitched into the napkins, I remember Mark looking at me during the toast and saying softly, "You okay?" Just that. 3 words. No one had asked me that during a family event. Not even once. I nodded, of course. Smiled. Said I was fine. And he smiled back, a little sad. Like he didn't believe me, but respected my right to lie. Back in the lodge, someone started clinking their glass for a toast. Brooke took the mic and laughed like the sound of her own voice was a gift to the room. "I just want to thank you all," she began, glowing under the lights. 10 years of marriage isn't just a milestone, it's a miracle. Guests chuckled. I didn't. "Mark and I," she continued, "we've built a life that means everything to me. He is steady and loyal, and mine." I boasted. That last word landed with a weight she didn't mean for it to have. I looked at Mark. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking down at the glass. Then at me. And just for a second, our eyes met. I don't know if he knew what she did. I don't even know if he felt anything yet. But I knew something had shifted. I could feel it again. That tilt. And across the room, Brooke turned her head toward us, smile fixed, but her eyes sharp. She knew something was off. Not just the glass. Me. I excused myself and slipped into the hallway that led to the bathrooms. The noise dimmed behind me. There was a mirror over the sink in the guest washroom, polished and uncracked. I looked into it, not at my makeup or my dress, but deeper into that place we don't always face. And I whispered, barely loud enough to hear it bounce off the tile. "She tried to drug me." Just saying it out loud made my chest tighten. Not because it shocked me, but because it didn't. I wasn't surprised. That was the part that hurt the most. The guest book sat on a little cedar table by the door, calligraphy pens, a Polaroid camera, and a sign that read, "Leave us a memory." I didn't. Every time I passed that table, I thought about writing something honest like, "I remember the time she stole my boyfriend, does that count?" But instead, I just kept walking. The lodge was full now. Standing room by the gift table, women in heels wobbling on the uneven pine floor, the band in the corner gently strangling a jazz version of Thinking Out Loud. I felt like I was watching it all from underwater. Brooke was gliding between groups like a pageant queen, laughing too brightly, hugging too tight. Mark was near the fireplace, talking to someone from his office, eyes glazed like he hadn't slept well. And me? I was seated at a table labeled Extended Family and Others. Okay, not even family. Just others. I should have laughed. I almost did. Instead, I took a small sip of wine and smiled when Aunt Connie started in with the usual something about my potential, followed by a dig about not bringing a date. "You know, a woman your age shouldn't wait too long," she said, slicing her prime rib. "Wait too long for what?" "For life," she whispered, like it was a curse word. I smiled and nodded and let the sting settle. People like Connie never meant to wound, they just carried dull knives. The chandeliers above us flickered slightly, like the wires couldn't quite handle the effort. There was a smell of cedar and lemon wax, and something faintly metallic I couldn't place. I spotted Mark glance toward the bar, then back at Brooke. They weren't standing together. That used to be their thing, always a hand on his arm, always a photo-ready pose. But now, every time they stood near each other, there was space between them, physical and otherwise. A few minutes later, Mark wandered over to the table where I was sitting. He didn't ask, just pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat down. "Hope I'm not interrupting your fan club," he said, nodding toward Connie. I smiled. "She's collecting my regrets like baseball cards." He chuckled, but it was thin. He looked tired, not just physically, but soul tired. I leaned in. "You okay?" "Fine," he said. Then after a pause, "You ever feel like you're starring in a play someone else wrote?" "Every day," I said. Mark tilted his head, looked at me sideways. "She wanted a perfect night." "She got one," I said flatly. "Maybe not." He tapped his glass with one finger, then looked down at it. "How's the wine?" "I wouldn't know," I said. "I've just been babysitting mine." He looked like he was about to say something else, but Brooke appeared behind him, smiling too wide again. "There you are," she said, curling her fingers around his shoulder like it was a handle. "The Andersons want to say hello." "In a sec," Mark said. She blinked. Just once. But her mouth didn't move. Then, with a slightly firmer tone, "They've been waiting." Mark sighed and stood. "Duty calls." As they walked away, I noticed Brooke glance back over her shoulder right at me. Not with suspicion. With calculation. Like she was trying to measure how far I'd gotten. Loretta found me near the dessert table not long after. Her hair was shellacked into a smooth dome, makeup holding steady under the overhead lights. "You've been quiet," she said, arranging mini cheesecakes with unnecessary precision. "Just observing," I said. "She worked hard on this," my mother added, still not looking at me. "I can tell. She's under a lot of pressure. The spa's been slower lately, and the influencer stuff, well, people move on." End quote. That was the closest my mom had ever come to saying Brooke wasn't perfect. I looked at her. "You worried about her?" "I'm worried about all of us," she replied, too quickly. Then, softer. "I want peace in this family. Before it's too late." Too late for what? I wanted to ask. But I didn't. Because the thing about my mother was, she only noticed the cracks in the wall after the whole ceiling collapsed. Later, as the anniversary cake was being wheeled out, a three-tiered monstrosity with sugared flowers and edible glitter, I caught sight of Mark again. He was standing near the open balcony doors, staring out at the lake. His drink was still in his hand. But it was the way he swayed slightly, like the floor underneath him was shifting, that made my chest tighten. And then he did something that stopped me cold. He rubbed his eyes with both hands, hard, and muttered something to himself. then turned back toward the room, but instead of heading to Brooke, he walked straight toward me. The smile on his face was strange, like someone trying to remember how. He leaned close and said, "Does this party feel weird to you?" I wanted to answer. I really did. But Brooke was already making her way toward us, her heels clicking like warning shots on the wood. So I just nodded. And waited. I knew the moment the switch started working. Mark was standing just off the dance floor, drink in hand, trying to hold a conversation with Brooke's cousin from Memphis, and he couldn't track the story. He laughed in the wrong place. Forgot the cousin's name mid-sentence. Said, "Wait, what?" 3 times in under a minute. His smile was still there, but it had slackened at the corners. Like someone tugged the string too many times. I watched from across the room, my stomach tightening. 3 sips in. Maybe 4. That's all it took. I hadn't known what she put in the glass. I still didn't. But Brooke wasn't the type to guess. She was calculated. She would have picked something subtle. Something that wouldn't knock me out, just make me sloppy. Off balance. Vulnerable. A little public humiliation, maybe. Something to put me in my place without leaving any proof. Except I never drank it. Mark did. He made his way toward the bar slower now. Looser in his steps. Not quite a stumble, but not steady either. I followed with my eyes, trying not to be obvious. He rested his elbow on the counter, then missed slightly and had to correct. The bartender raised an eyebrow. Mark just grinned. I caught a sliver of their exchange as I moved closer to the drink station. "Make it a double," he muttered. "You sure?" the bartender asked. Mark leaned in and said something I couldn't hear. Then he laughed too loud for the moment. Heads turned. Brooke, across the room, glanced over. Just for a second. Then back to her friends. She didn't see it yet. I felt something sharp press against my heel. Looking down, I realized I'd stepped on one of those sugared flower petals from the cake scattered across the floor like a fairy tale gone stale. I scraped it off my shoe and turned back to the bar. Mark was already gone. I found him leaning against the balcony railing, looking out toward the lake. The sky was starting to fade, that soft, late summer dusk that makes everything feel quieter than it is. He didn't look at me as I approached. Just said, "You ever want to disappear?" I hesitated. "All the time." He nodded. I used to think it meant I was weak. And now? I think maybe it's the only thing I've ever wanted that made sense. I leaned next to him. Close enough to smell the cheap cologne he only wore for events like this, something Brooke picked out, probably from a promo basket. His fingers tapped against the wood rail, too fast, then too slow. "That drink hit me harder than it should have," he said suddenly. I looked at him. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said. Then, I don't know. I feel weird. Foggy. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Do you think it was the champagne?" He looked at me. That was the moment. The pause. Like a thread pulled tight. "I guess," he said. "Maybe I just didn't eat enough. Who knows?" But there was something in his eyes. Like he'd seen the thread too and was deciding whether or not to pull. A breeze moved through the trees, rustling the string lights above us. Somewhere behind us, the DJ had started playing something upbeat, something inappropriate for the mood. Mark straightened up. Smiled that same not quite smile. "You're always quiet at these things," he said. "I prefer watching to performing." He gave a short laugh. "You and me both." Then he looked back toward the lodge. "She's gonna come looking." I nodded. He didn't move. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure." Do you trust her?" The air changed. Like it dropped 5 degrees. He took a long breath. "You're not supposed to ask that kind of thing." "I know." Another pause. Then, quietly. "Sometimes. I think. I don't know anymore." A tap on my shoulder made me flinch. "Brooke." I turned. She was holding 2 flutes of champagne and smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. "There you are," she said sweetly. "I was starting to think you two had disappeared." "Just getting some air," Mark said. "You don't look well," she said, her voice dropping half a note. You're flushed. Mark waved her off. It's warm out here. She handed me one of the flutes. Here, toast with us. I took it. Didn't drink. Neither did Mark. Brooke raised her glass and tapped it gently against mine, then his. To 10 more years, she said. Mark gave her a look I couldn't quite read. To something, he said, and sipped. I didn't. Brooke's smile faltered just a flicker. She noticed. Not the switch. Not yet. But the refusal. The disobedience. She looked down at my full glass, then up at me. And her expression for just a breath was pure calculation. Then it was gone. Mark didn't follow Brooke back inside. After the toast, she floated away with a perfectly rehearsed wave, rejoining her circle near the dessert table. Her laugh echoed off the wood beams like it had been rehearsed for the occasion. Mark stayed behind on the balcony, eyes low, drink untouched now. I watched him for a few seconds, the way his hand tightened around the railing, then loosened. Like his body couldn't decide if it was tense or tired. When I walked over, he didn't even look up. Still with us? I asked softly. Yeah, he said, voice hoarse. Just a little, lightheaded. You need to sit? Number I just need. A minute. That was the first time I'd ever heard him sound unsure. Mark didn't do unsure. He was the guy who double-checked locks before bed. Who parked straight. Who answered every question like there was a form to fill out behind it. But right then, he sounded like someone who hadn't had control in a long, long time. I stood beside him, both of us looking out at the lake like it held some kind of answer. He pulled something from his pocket, a small, dull silver coin. Army coin? I asked. Yeah, he said. They give them for service. This one's from a deployment in Kabul. He turned it over between his fingers. It caught a little of the patio light. I keep it with me, for grounding. When things feel fuzzy. Does it help? He didn't answer right away. Then he looked at me, and I saw it. The clarity. The flicker of awareness pushing through the fog. Did she do something? He asked. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? His voice was low. Careful. The drink. I don't know. I felt fine earlier. Now it's like, I don't know where my head is. I tried to stay still. Tried to breathe slow. I'm not sure, I said. What makes you think she did? Mark gave a bitter little laugh. Because this isn't new. That stopped me. He rubbed the coin between his palms now, like it might give him more strength than the drink had taken away. She used to do this thing, he said slowly. If we argued before company came over, she'd make me a drink, said it would help me loosen up. I didn't speak. Every time, I'd end up too tired to care by the time guests arrived. Said stupid things. Forgot what we'd even argued about. Thought maybe it was just stress, or drinking too fast. His jaw clenched. But then she started doing it before we went out. Weddings, her work events, even just dinner with her friends. I felt cold, even though the air outside was still thick and warm. Did you ever ask her? I said. He nodded. She'd laugh. Say I was imagining things, said I needed to get my blood sugar checked. And you believed her? His eyes didn't leave the coin. I wanted to. We stood there for a long minute, both of us pretending the lake was more interesting than what was unraveling between us. I switched the glasses, I said. Mark turned toward me slowly, but not surprised. She was standing by the table earlier. I saw her do something. I didn't know what, but I didn't want to take the risk. He nodded once. Like something inside him had just exhaled. So I drank it, he said. You didn't know. I should have. I shook my head. You couldn't have. I barely did. There was silence again. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that sat between two people when truth had changed something permanent. I'm sorry, I said. Mark looked at me, and for once, I couldn't read him. Then he smiled. It wasn't sarcastic or cold, it wasn't performative. It was tired. Like something had finally broken and maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. Inside, someone had started a slow song. A few couples were dancing. Brooke wasn't among them. Mark slipped the coin back into his pocket. She says I make her look small, he said. What? That's what she told me last week. Said when I'm quiet at her events, people assume I'm judging them. That I suck the energy out of the room. I swallowed hard. So you're supposed to perform? He looked over his shoulder at the glowing lodge windows. She calls it being a team. End 40. The bitterness in his voice was new. Sharper than I'd heard before. She ever do that to you? He asked. Make you question what you remember? All the time, I said. We stood there, side by side, two people who had lived inside the same storm for years without realizing it. I wanted to say something that made it better. But there wasn't anything. Just the soft clink of glasses behind us. And the sound of Brooke's laugh still floating across the room, still perfectly intact. It happened faster than I expected and slower than I like to admit. 1 second I was standing at the dessert table, staring blankly at a tray of chocolate-dipped strawberries. The next, I caught a flicker in the window glass, something behind me, something off. I turned my head just slightly. The window acted like a one-way mirror at that hour, reflecting the glow of the chandeliers and the bustle of the room. In that glass, I saw Brooke standing by the drink table. She wasn't drinking. She wasn't talking. She was bent forward, her clutch half open, her hand moving deliberately over the rim of one champagne flute. Just one. Then she adjusted the napkins, repositioned the flutes like nothing happened, and walked away smiling like she always did. Calculated. Choreographed. I didn't move for a few seconds. Did I really see that? My heart thudded once. Then again. Yes. I did. There were still people milling around, laughter rising and fading like waves. No one else seemed to notice her. Or me. I walked over to the drink table. Slowly, casually. There were 7 flutes arranged in a near-perfect triangle. But one wasn't aligned. It sat slightly forward, like it had been nudged. Or chosen. I didn't touch it right away. Just looked. The bubbles inside had settled faster than the others. A faint line of residue clung to the glass, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. I knew. And I knew why she did it. She didn't want me dead. That wasn't her style. She wanted me rattled. Maybe a little dizzy, off balance enough to slur a word or miss a step. Enough to give her a reason to step in. Smile, save face. She wanted the spotlight. She always had. And I was supposed to be the shadow she stood in. My fingers hovered over the glass, and for half a second, I hesitated. If I took it, I'd be confirming it. Making it real. But if I didn't, she'd win. Again. Silently, invisibly. And I'd spend the rest of the night doubting what I saw. Second-guessing myself. Telling myself I was paranoid. No more. I picked up the tainted glass. And carried it across the room. Mark was standing near the gift table. Alone, like he always seemed to be lately. His drink, something amber, nearly gone, was dangling loosely in his hand. When he saw me coming, he gave a small nod. Polite. Faintly tired. Trade? I asked, holding out the champagne. He looked at my glass, then his. Yours looks fancier, he said with a weak smile. Looks can be deceiving, I said. Trust me, mine's the better deal. He shrugged and handed me his drink. We clinked glasses. To something, he said. To clarity, I answered. I barely wet my lips with his liquor. Didn't taste much. He sipped the champagne like it was nothing. And that was it. The switch. Clean. Controlled. Silent. I carried Mark's old glass across the room and set it down on a tray a waiter was clearing. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. I glanced toward the corner where Brooke had been. She was talking to someone near the photo backdrop, posing with her hand on her hip, head tilted just so. Then she saw me. And something in her expression shifted. She looked at the drink in my hand. Then at Mark. Then back at me. For 1 second, the smile on her face froze, not outwardly, but just enough. Like a seam had split in her performance. She didn't walk over. didn't demand anything. That wasn't how she worked. Instead, she raised her flute like a toast across the room. Slow. Intentional. I raised mine back and smiled. The same kind of smile she used on me growing up, the kind that said, "I know what you did, but I'm not going to blink first." Only this time, I wasn't bluffing. I stepped away from the drink table and found a quiet spot by the wall. The overhead lights glinted off a mirror mounted above the lodge's fireplace, an antique, slightly warped around the edges. From where I stood, I could see Brooke's reflection. Still posing, still laughing, still pretending everything was perfect. But her eyes flicked toward me. Twice. She felt it. Not the switch, exactly. But the shift. Something about the way I was standing. Or the fact that I hadn't disappeared after she smiled. She was used to my silence. This time, I was watching. And for the first time in my life, she didn't know what I was going to do next. It started with a laugh that came a little too loud. Mark was standing near the fireplace, talking to one of Brooke's work friends, a woman in a gold sequin dress who hadn't stopped checking her phone since dessert, and out of nowhere, he laughed like she'd told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. She hadn't even finished her sentence. Heads turned. Not a lot. Just a few. The kind of turn that says, something's off, but I'm not sure what yet. I was standing near the gift table, pretending to admire the custom calligraphy signs Brooke had printed for every station, gifts of love. Dessert is sweet, but marriage is sweeter, when I saw it. Mark swayed slightly to the left, then righted himself. He blinked hard. Shook his head once like he was trying to wake up inside his own body. And no one but me seemed to notice. Yet, by the time the band launched into a jazzy cover of Can't Help Falling in Love, Mark had made it to the edge of the dance floor. He was moving slower now. Like each step required a decision. He passed one of the buffet tables and knocked over a stack of appetizer plates, not violently, but just enough to make people flinch. A few guests chuckled awkwardly. One clapped him on the back. "Too much bubbly already?" someone joked. Mark smiled again, that same loose, unhinged smile. But this time, his eyes didn't match it. Brooke appeared at his side in seconds. She wrapped her arm around his waist like she was posing for a photo. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she cooed, voice tight at the edges. "Peachy," Mark slurred. "Just balancing my chi." A few nearby guests laughed politely. But Brooke didn't. Her grip on his waist firmed. "Let's go freshen up," she said, already trying to steer him toward the hallway. He pulled away gently, but firmly. "I'm fine, just got a little lightheaded." Brooke froze, only for a breath. Then the smile snapped back on. "Maybe get some air," she offered, glancing around. "Too much excitement, huh?" I moved toward them, slower than I needed to. I didn't want to stop it. But I didn't want to see it go any further either. Mark turned toward me. He blinked, then said, loud enough for at least 3 tables to hear, "Hey, there she is, the only honest one here." Conversations nearby dipped. Brooke's smile twitched. "I think I married the wrong Morgan," he added. And just like that, the room quieted. Only the clink of silverware and the awkward shuffle of someone switching songs on the speaker. Brooke grabbed his elbow, hard this time. "Mark, you're not well." "Nope," he said, still smiling. "And that's the first true thing you've said all year." That was the moment I felt it. Not guilt. Not satisfaction. Just gravity. Like I'd dropped a stone into a still lake and the ripples had finally reached shore. Mark turned again, this time facing the windows. I watched him pause, hand braced on the back of a chair, and then slowly, as if the floor had tilted, he sat down hard in the nearest seat. No collapse. No drama. Just folded. Someone gasped. Loretta appeared at my shoulder. "What's going on with him?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, and my hands had gone cold. "He doesn't drink like that," she added, eyes narrowing. Brooke was already crouched beside him, brushing his hair back like a mother with a feverish child. "He's fine," she said quickly. Probably dehydrated. He's been running himself ragged. But her voice shook. And when she looked up just for a second, our eyes met. She knew. Not the full picture. Not yet. But she knew something had slipped out of her hands. The venue coordinator approached from the side, soft-spoken but firm. "Do you need a medic, Mrs. Kavanaugh?" "No," Brooke snapped. Then, catching herself. "No, thank you. He just needs a minute." Mark muttered something under his breath. I didn't catch it. Brooke looked at me again. Not with confusion. With calculation. Like she was trying to rearrange puzzle pieces that suddenly didn't fit. Guests were starting to murmur now. A few had gathered by the dessert table, whispering behind cocktail napkins. I could hear phrases like, "must be the heat," and "was he drinking before they got here?" The music had stopped. Only the hum of the AC remained. Brooke stood up, smoothed her dress, and turned to the crowd with her best version of a hostess voice. "Sorry for the hiccup, everyone. Mark just got a little lightheaded. We'll be back to dancing in no time." No one clapped. But no one left either. I stayed still, watching Mark as he sat there, hands clasped, eyes struggling to focus. He looked like someone mid-fall, who hadn't hit the floor yet. And Brooke? She looked like someone who knew the floor was coming, and had no idea how to cushion the blow. The silence didn't rush in all at once. It arrived in waves. A clink here. A whisper there. A strained laugh from someone pretending they didn't just watch Mark sit down like his legs had stopped obeying. The music had been turned off. No one remembered when. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching the space around Mark expand, guests inching away like he might spill. Brooke crouched next to him, still smoothing his hair like she could pet him back to composure. "It's okay," she said to no one in particular. "He just skipped lunch. He's fine." Her voice was steady, but her hand was shaking. A man in a blue linen blazer leaned over and murmured something to her. She nodded, too fast. "I'll take him outside," she said, looping an arm under Mark's. He didn't move. He just sat there, blinking. Not lost, just far away. Brooke tried again. "Come on, baby. Let's get some air, okay?" Mark murmured something that didn't make sense. I couldn't hear it clearly. That's when I spoke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. "You need to tell them what you put in my glass." Then, Brooke froze. So did the room. She turned her head slowly, like maybe she hadn't heard me right. "What?" Her voice wasn't sharp. It was brittle, paper-thin. I stepped closer. My heart thudded once, then steadied. "You heard me." She stood up, brushing invisible lint from her dress. "Haley," she said, voice soft, "I think maybe you've had." "I haven't had anything," I said. "Because I saw you. At the drink table." Gasps are quieter than you'd expect. But they ripple fast. I didn't look around. Didn't need to. Because Brooke wasn't looking around either. She was looking straight at me. Eyes wide. Smile gone. "I don't know what you think you saw." "I know what I saw," I said. "And I know which glass you touched." A pause. Then she said it. "You switched them?" And there it was. The first real crack. It didn't sound like horror or remorse. It sounded like panic. Like she'd just realized she wasn't the smartest person in the room anymore. "I had to," I said. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I wasn't going to drink it. Another voice cut in low, trembling. "Loretta." "Haley, what are you saying?" I turned toward her. She looked smaller than I remembered, arms folded like a shield, lips pursed so tightly I could barely see them. I said it carefully. Clearly. "I think Brooke tried to drug me. And Mark drank it instead." The room fell fully quiet. Even the air seemed to pause. Brooke let out a laugh that wasn't a laugh. "You're not serious. This is insane." She looked around the room, searching for support the way she used to look toward Mom at family dinners when things started going sideways. This is slander," she said. "You could ruin my business." I almost said you already ruined your marriage. But I didn't have to. Because Mark, still seated, still distant, let out a low, slow breath. "She's not lying," he said. Just 3 words. And the room cracked open. A man near the buffet said, "Should we call someone?" Brooke's tone flipped. "Number. We're fine, he's fine, he just drank too fast." But the momentum had shifted. I could feel it. A server slipped quietly toward the venue coordinator. A woman near the fireplace pulled her phone out. Not to film but to text. And Loretta. She just stared at me. Like she didn't know me. Or maybe, like she finally did. Brooke stepped forward. Her eyes locked on mine, burning now. "You think this makes you the hero?" "No," I said. "It just makes me honest." Another breath passed. Then another. I looked down at the glass still in my hand, untouched. I set it gently on the table next to me. It clinked against the wood like punctuation. Brooke didn't speak again. She just turned. And for the first time that night, maybe in years, she had no idea what to say. The hospital waiting room was too cold. Not the kind of cold that made you shiver, the kind that settled in your bones and made you feel like time had stopped moving. I sat there with my arms crossed, jacket draped over my knees, staring at a magazine someone had left behind. It was 3 months old. The cover said something about decluttering your soul. Felt iroanit. Across from me, Loretta sat stiffly, her purse clutched in both hands like it might run off if she blinked. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Mark had been taken back about an hour ago. They hadn't let us in. The paramedics said it was precautionary. That he was stable, just unresponsive. But the look on Brooke's face, that frozen mask she wore as they wheeled him out, told me she was calculating timelines. What had he eaten? What would show up in a toxicology report? Who was still watching? "I don't know what that was," Loretta finally said. Her voice was low. Tired. I didn't answer. She cleared her throat. "He's a grown man. If he didn't feel well, he should have said something." "He did," I said. "You just weren't listening." She looked at me, then really looked. Eyes narrowed. "This isn't the time to point fingers." "I'm not pointing," I said. "I'm holding one up." She exhaled and leaned back against the chair like it suddenly weighed more. "I raised you girls to love each other," she murmured. "No, you didn't," I replied. "You raised us to keep quiet and smile in pictures." The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly. I looked up. One of the bulbs was flickering. When the nurse finally came out, she gave a polite smile. "He's awake now, still groggy, but alert. Just needs some time." "Is it okay?" Loretta asked. "He's resting." He asked to speak with. She glanced at her clipboard. "Haley?" Loretta looked at me, blinking. "He asked for you?" I nodded and stood slowly, legs aching from the cold seat. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and overripe bananas. Mark's room was small, a single bed, heart monitor, the kind of beige curtain that doesn't block anything but dignity. He looked tired. Eyes rimmed with red. But he smiled when he saw me. Hey, I said, closing the door softly behind me. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for asking." He sat up a little, wincing. "They said I'll be okay." It was mild. Whatever it was. I nodded. I told them it might have been an interaction with something Brooke gave me. Didn't get into details, yet. There was a pause. "I'm sorry," I said. He frowned. "For what?" "For letting it get this far." He shook his head. "You didn't let anything happen. You stopped it." There was a chair in the corner. I pulled it closer and sat down. Mark reached for the water cup on the side table. His hands were still a little shaky. "She used to tell me I was forgetful," he said. "Said I needed to stay sharp for her business dinners. That I embarrassed her when I drifted off during stories." He looked at me. I thought I was losing my memory. My throat tightened. "I started writing things down," he continued. "Kept a notebook, tracked everything I ate, drank, said. Just to prove I wasn't crazy." He laughed once, bitter and small. "Turns out, she was just moving the goalposts." I reached into my purse and pulled out a granola bar. One of those sad ones, dry and dusty, emergency snack level. He smiled. You always carry those. Work trauma. We sat in silence for a beat. The monitor beeped steadily. She was never going to stop, I said. He nodded. And I was never going to say anything, he replied. Until now. There was a note taped to the back of the door. A printed flyer about emotional fatigue in caregivers. The title was underlined in blue. I stared at it for a while, then back at Mark. Do you think she'll come here? He shrugged. Maybe. She doesn't like loose ends. Would you let her in? Another pause. Then, softly. Not tonight. I stood up. Smoothed my jacket. He looked up at me, tired but clear. Thank you, he said again. You don't owe me that. No, he said, but I do. I opened the door, the fluorescent light spilling in behind me. Loretta stood up the second I appeared. Well? She asked. He's awake. He's fine. She took a step toward the hallway, then stopped. Did he say anything about? Not to you, I said. Not yet. I breathed and walked past her toward the vending machine, needing something warm, even if it came from a plastic cup. I was standing at the vending machine, staring at a row of off-brand sodas and thinking about nothing at all, when I heard her voice behind me. So this is where you ran off to. Even now, even here, she sounded polished. Like we were still at her party and she'd just caught me by the shrimp platter. I didn't turn around. Didn't run, I said. Just needed quiet. She walked up beside me, her heels clicking too sharply for this tiled floor. She stood close enough that I could smell her perfume citrus and something sharp underneath. You told them I drugged you, she said. No, I replied. I told them I saw you put something in my drink. I told them Mark drank it instead. She let out a soft laugh. Splitting hairs now? I turned to face her. She looked tired, but not fragile. Her makeup was still perfect. Her eyes still held that shine she wore like armor. But there was a crack in it now. Small, but spreading. Why? I asked. Why would you do that to me? She looked past me, like maybe if she focused hard enough on the vending machine, she could rewrite the evening. Then she said, because you don't break. He blinked. What? You don't snap, Haley. You don't cry, you don't yell, you just stay calm. You make people believe you're the sane one. And that bothers you? It makes me invisible, she snapped. Then softened, like it surprised even her. Do you know what it's like to feel like no matter what you do, everyone still sees your little sister as the one with integrity? I didn't answer. Because I had no idea she'd carried that. Or maybe I did, but I told myself she didn't care. She looked down at her hands. Her nails were perfect, always were. I thought maybe, if you stumbled. Just once. If people saw you a little fuzzy around the edges, they'd stop handing you the benefit of the doubt. You mean they'd stop seeing what was real? She didn't argue. She just sighed. Then said, I didn't mean for Mark to drink it. But you meant for someone to. She met my eyes again. There it was, that flicker. Not guilt. But exposure. I didn't think you'd notice. We stood in silence for a long time. The vending machine hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped. You think I haven't noticed all these years? I said finally. The way you twist things, the way you smile while you cut people down. She flinched. Just slightly. I thought you were okay with it, she said. I laughed softly, bitterly. No one's okay with being erased. Brooke leaned against the wall like she needed it to stay upright. I was always the one who had to push harder, she said. To be seen, to get anything. Mom gave you the gentle label. I got dramatic. You earned it. She gave a small, humorless smile. Yeah, I did. She looked away again. Then back. He's going to leave me, she said quietly. I didn't respond. He should. Those two words landed like a pin dropped on glass. She didn't argue. Didn't cry. Just stood there in the sterile light, too proud to collapse. I didn't want it to go this far, she said after a beat. But you were always so calm. So damn steady. I wanted you to feel unsure. Just once. I have, I said. My whole life. Because of you. The silence between us filled the hallway. Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded photo. I recognized it immediately. Two girls, standing in front of a sandbox. One holding a popsicle, the other squinting at the camera like it had just lied to her. I remembered that day. Brooke had pushed me down 5 minutes before the picture was taken. Then gave me her popsicle to shut me up. She handed it to me. I don't know why I kept this. I took it. And for the first time in years, I believed her. I'm not trying to be your enemy, she said, her voice low. You just don't know how to be anything else. She didn't argue with that either. And maybe that was the closest thing to a confession I'd ever get. I have to go, she said, straightening her posture like she could still win the room. Will you visit him? She hesitated. Then, not until I figure out how to speak without selling aversion. I nodded once. She turned. Walked away. Her heels didn't click quite as sharply this time. I looked down at the photo again. Two girls in the sun. Before all the bruises were invisible. Before silence became our family's love language. I didn't smile. But I didn't throw it away either. The hospital bracelet still clung to Mark's wrist like a paper reminder of everything we hadn't said out loud yet. He was sitting up this time, sipping from a styrofoam cup that smelled like weak broth. I'd kill for a cheeseburger, he said. I smiled. That bad? Hospital food is designed to make you appreciate anything that isn't hospital food. I pulled the chair closer to his bed. Duly noted. We sat quietly for a moment. There was a peace to the quiet this time. Not avoidance. Not dread. Just breath. I reached into my purse and pulled out the photo Brooke had given me. Two girls. One summer. A moment staged after something small but cruel. I handed it to him. She gave me this, I said. He looked at it, studied the edges. She said she didn't know why she kept it. He nodded slowly. Because that's what she does. Collects the past, controls the version. I looked at him. She told me she did it because I don't break. He gave a tired smile. That's why she picked you. I think that's why I stopped letting her. Mark set the photo on the side table and adjusted the blanket across his lap. I've already called a lawyer, he said. I raised an eyebrow. She doesn't know yet, he continued. But I'm not waiting anymore. You sure? He looked me square in the eye. She's been shaping my life for years and calling it support. I'm done decorating a prison cell just because the furniture's nice. That landed. I sat back and exhaled. There it was. Not vengeance, not victory. Just release. The television mounted in the corner played a muted commercial something about refinancing and freedom. Mark followed my gaze. Feels weird, he said. To make decisions for myself again. But not wrong? He shook his head. Number, not wrong. A nurse knocked gently, stepped in, checked a monitor, and smiled before leaving without a word. Mark leaned back. I spent so long being the steady one, he said. And she used that like a weapon. Made me feel like my silence was agreement. I nodded. I know what that's like. We didn't say Brooke's name again. But she was still in the room, not physically, but in the shape of our recovery. Do you think she meant it? He asked after a moment. The confession? Yeah. I considered it. She meant part of it, I said. Enough to say it out loud. But not enough to change. He nodded. Then said, she'll tell herself this was all your fault. I know. And mine. I smiled sadly. She already has. Mark looked back at the photo. Then handed it back to me. You keeping it? He hesitated. Then shook my head. No, I said. But I think I needed to hold it once. I folded it slowly. Not carefully, just honestly. And slipped it back into my purse. There was a window on the far wall. Afternoon light pushed through the blinds in thin white stripes. I stood up. You okay if I go? He nodded. You're coming back? Yeah, I said. but not because I have to. That mattered more than I thought it would. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Haley. I stopped. Thank you. Not just for what you did. For who you didn't become. It took me a second to find my breath. Me too. The hallway outside was quiet. No drama. No footsteps chasing me. Just the hum of vending machines and a flickering light overhead. I passed the nurse's station and paused. There was a plastic bin labeled personal effects. Inside was a small pile of bracelets, keys, and wallet cards. An orderly sorted through them methodically. I glanced down at my own wrist. No bracelet. Nothing to tether me to this place. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like freedom, not exile. It's strange how quiet can feel like both a cage and a cushion. For most of my life, I mistook silence for strength. I thought not speaking up meant I was calm, mature, in control. But the truth is I stayed quiet because I was scared of what would happen if I spoke. Who I'd lose, what I'd break. And worst of all, that no one would believe me. It's been a week since the hospital. The party never resumed. The venue cleared out in record time. Someone wrapped the leftover cake in foil and left it in the staff fridge untouched. Mark's back home now. Not with Brooke. Not in that house. He's staying with a friend while everything gets sorted. There's paperwork in process, and none of it is fast, but it's moving. For once, I think he is too. Brooke hasn't called me. Not that I expected her to. She's still posting photos like nothing happened, sunsets, smoothies, a throwback Thursday of her and Mark from happier times. But the captions are different now. Less sure of themselves. More desperate in the polish. I don't comment. I don't scroll. I just let it be. Loretta texted once. Just one line. Hope Mark's feeling better. No question mark. No apology. Just enough to pretend she reached out. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some silences finally feel earned. This morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, the one with the tiny crack near the corner from when I dropped my hairdryer 2 years ago. I looked at my own face for a long time. Not checking for blemishes. Not adjusting my posture. Just looking. There was a steadiness in my eyes I hadn't seen in a while. Like I'd finally come home to myself. There's a picture on my dresser, not the one Brooke gave me. This one's newer. From a hiking trip I took last fall, alone. I'm sitting on a rock, wind in my hair, arms around my knees. No makeup. No filters. Just me. That photo isn't framed. It leans against a stack of books, a little crooked. But it's the only one in the room that feels honest. I've stopped trying to write Brooke's story for her. Stopped rehearsing comebacks for arguments that won't happen. Stopped carrying the weight of who she wanted me to be. That weight wasn't mine. It never was. What I carry now is lighter. But truer. A voice. A boundary. A softness I thought I had to bury in order to survive. Turns out, softness isn't weakness. It's just quiet courage with an open hand. Sometimes I think back to the party. To the moment I said it out loud. You need to tell them what you put in my glass. My voice didn't shake. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I was finally done pretending it didn't matter. That was the beginning. Not of revenge, but of return. To myself. To the truth. Mark asked me yesterday if I regret anything. If I'd go back and do it sooner. My answer surprised even me. No, I said. Because I wasn't ready yet. And I think that's what I needed most, not just to be right. Not just to be heard. But to be ready. There's a quote I read once. I can't remember who said it, but it stuck with me. The day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. This season wasn't about blooming. It was about clearing the soil. Tearing out the rot. Making room for something that's mine. I'm not angry anymore. Not all the time. I don't replay the worst parts. Don't pick at the wound hoping it will scar faster. I just breathe. I let my story live without shrinking it to fit someone else's comfort. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, So be it. I've been uncomfortable in silence for too long. This is my voice. Not loud. Not flashy. But mine. And for the first time. That's more than enough.